Hey guys, and welcome back to part 2 of my Zero to Hero Prot Paladin guide. So in this episode, we're going to be going over all the abilities you have access to as a Prot Paladin. So today we're going to go over them, when you use them, what they do, and how to get the most out of them. Alright, let's get cracking. Auras. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is our auras. Auras are a unique Paladin mechanic that give us a beneficial buff which affect both us and our party members within 30 yards. We have access to 6 different auras, and we can only have one on at any time. If you have 2 paladins in a single group, the auras don't stack, and you should run different auras. So the auras that we have access to are Devotion Aura. This is a flat armor increase. It gives 861 additional armor at level 70. This is a great staple aura for tanking bosses, hard-hitting dungeons, and when you start off, is probably going to be your go-to aura whenever you're tanking a boss. So the next one is Retribution Aura. So Retribution Aura causes 26 holy damage to any creature that strikes a party member within 30 yards. Now this is a really nice aura when you're doing a lot of AoE tanking and you don't need the armor to survive. Generally you'd run this in dungeons on trash. On bosses with just a single target hitting you, Retribution Aura falls off a lot. And because of the bigger hits that come from bosses, generally you should use Devotion Aura over Retribution Aura. The next aura is Concentration Aura. This really doesn't concern us too much as a Prot Paladin. However, it's good to know what it does. It's a 35% chance of ignoring spell interruption, so a mechanic most commonly referred to as pushback. If you are solo AoE farming, you can combine this with a talent in the Holy Tree to give you 100% pushback reduction. So something to know, that's pretty much the only time you'd ever use it as a Prot Paladin. Next up, we have 3 different resistance auras. So we have Frost Resistance Aura, we have Shadow Resistance Aura, and we have Fire Resistance Aura. These all give 70 resistance to party members within 30 yards. And you need to understand as well, they do not stack with other similar buffs. So the Shadow Resistance Aura can be provided by the Priest's Shadow Resistance buff. So if you do have a Priest in your raid, generally the Priest's Shadow buff is a better option than using Shadow Res Aura. Frost Resistance Aura can be provided by a Shaman, as well as Fire Resistance Aura also provided by a Shaman Totem. The good thing about the resistance auras on the Paladin, they move around with you, same as the buff from the Priest, where totems have to be placed and moved. And the last aura is a talented aura. It's Sanctity Aura. This is a special use case once you start to reach higher gear levels. It increases holy damage done by party members by 10%. This is the keystone ability in a build, which we call Sank Aura build. We'll discuss that in the talents section. But something to be aware of, this exists, and it is a fantastic pick if you don't have a Retribution in your party, something we'll look at deeper in the talent section. So that's the auras that we have access to and how they work. And the last aura, sorry, nearly forgot this one, Crusader Aura, increases mount speed by 20%. I see a lot of pallies leaving this on in PvE content, especially for the first 2 pulls, because we always forget. Don't leave this on, it has no use inside a raid or a dungeon. Switch it to something more useful. And that covers the aura section. Blessings. So next up we're going to take a look at our blessings. So these are our unique paladin buffs that most people get excited about when they've got a paladin in the party. This is generally the thing they are most excited to see. So a few different blessings. Now how these work, you can buff your party members with them. Eventually you get greater blessings, and those go on a class. So if I was blessing greater, blessing of wisdom, that's going to hit all the mages when I buff one person with it. Does open up some special situations if you've got a resto druid that wants wisdom and a feral druid that wants might. We have an add-on for that, Pally Power. We installed that in the last video. I will go over how to set this up, but for now let's just go over how the blessings work. So Blessing of Wisdom, it's just a straight MP5 blessing. Blessing of Might is a straight attack power blessing. Generally as a Prot Paladin you won't be blessing either of these in a raid environment, as the Holy Paladin generally picks up improved wisdom and improved might. Next up we've got Blessing of Kings. So this increases total stats by 10% and is found in the protection tree. Definitely worth spending a point for this one. Blessing of Kings is one of the strongest buffs in the game, increasing every stat by 10%. Blessing of Salvation is a baseline ability that's going to decrease people's threat generated by 30%. And in a raid environment, you want to have this on just about every single DPS. Extremely useful and is what allows us to be such a viable tank in dungeons. Next up, Blessing of Light. So this one will see less play. However, if you're buffing all the warriors with Salvation and you have a tank warrior, you'll probably put Light on that warrior if you have 3 paladins in your raid group. So this is just increasing the healing done by the paladins, Flash of Light and Holy Light. You'll only ever use this if you are healing in a raid environment or in a raid environment with a Holy Paladin. And last but certainly not least, Blessing of Sanctuary. So this is a flat buff that's going to reduce the damage you take from all sources. As well, when you block, you're going to do a little bit of holy damage. So this only really sees use in environments where you're not getting hit too hard. So a good example of that would be a normal dungeon where you're doing big pulls. There's no scaling with this, so generally you want Kings over Sanctuary. But if you can get Sanctuary and Kings, that is your prime setup as a Prot Paladin. Really nice increase to your AoE threat. However, it doesn't scale with gear outside of just blocking more and getting more procs. So that's all the buffs we've got access to. There are a few more blessings, but they're more of a special use case ability, and we'll discuss them in the situational ability that I've got coming up later in the video. Seals. Okay, so let's talk about seals. So seals are the primary combat rotation for a paladin. So how this works is you cast a seal, you get a buff. When you white swing at a boss, an effect happens, but you also have the option of judging that seal to create a debuff on the boss or a different effect. So Seal of Righteousness goes on us. When we white swing, we do holy damage. Pretty simple to understand, yes. When you judge it, it's going to do a big burst of holy damage. And generally when you're using Seal of Righteousness, you're going to go through a rotation of putting Seal of Righteousness on yourself. When your judgment is off cooldown, you judge, and then you'll reapply Seal of Righteousness to yourself, and you just rinse and repeat that rotation. So Seal of Righteousness is our most useful single target tanking seal, and it's what you'll spend most of your time casting and judging. So Seal of Corruption or Seal of Vengeance, depending which faction you picked. So this seal is similar to Seal of Righteousness, apart from it has a chance to apply a dot onto the monster that you're swinging at. And when you judge it, it is going to do a burst of holy damage based on how many stacks you have on the boss. Stacks up to 5 times. When it's fully stacked, you're also going to get a little bit of bonus damage for each white swing. The main problem with Seal of Corruption or Seal of Vengeance is the fact that it is on chance. Generally, when you're tanking, you need good, reliable threat. And Seal of Corruption or Seal of Vengeance doesn't give you that. It can be unreliable. It doesn't scale as well as Seal of Righteousness. And my experience in using this generally results in less threat than using Seal of Righteousness. Now, there is a special use case for this seal, and that's when there is a threat drop in the encounter. And what you can do is you can stack up Seal of Corruption. I'm just going to call it Corruption for now. Seal of Corruption, get it up to 5 stacks, and right before that threat drop happens, you would switch back to Seal of Righteousness. You'd judge Seal of Righteousness, but you'd have the dot sitting on the monster or the boss. And that extra threat after the threat drop is just going to tick away for 15 seconds. You let it fall off, and you've got more threat than you would have if you hadn't used the seal at all. That is the one and only time that I would recommend using this seal. Okay, so now we're going to go into seals that you judge generally once. So we're going to begin with Seal of the Crusader. So this is a seal that's going to reduce your swing time. I would recommend to have this on yourself if you are judging it for the least amount of time possible. So when you judge it, it's going to increase the damage the mob takes from holy damage. And if you are judging this, you kind of want to have Seal of Righteousness on yourself for the longest amount of time. Right before judge comes off cooldown, you're going to switch to seal, judge this, and then it stays on the boss. So these seals that you judge one time, when you swing on the boss, it's going to refresh the duration of this judgment, and it lasts for 20 seconds. So it reads here, your melee strikes will refresh the spell's duration. So Seal of the Crusader is generally put up by the Prot Paladin. Ret can spec into a talent that's going to give the Wraith 3% extra crit when this is up. So we generally leave that to the Ret, but that talent is accessible for a Prot Paladin if you don't have a Ret. But generally, if you're only getting one seal up, that is going to be Seal of Wisdom. So Seal of Wisdom is a seal that you put up on yourself. If you swing, you regenerate mana. When you judge it, anybody that casts a spell or melee swing on that mob is going to have a chance to get mana back, and this is the most desirable seal in a raid environment where people have the ability to run Generally, this will be your assignment as a Prot Pal. Sometimes the H-Pal is going to cover it for you if you're already threat capping your raid. We usually put this up after our wings falls off, so we'll talk about what they are in a minute, but note about 20 seconds into the fight, you should try and get one of these up, get a quick judge in, and then go back to Seal of Righteousness. We'll talk about full rotation in a future video. Right now, we're just going to try and stick to what the abilities do. On that note, Seal of Light. So just like Wisdom, this one only affects melee attackers though. It's the least desirable of the 3 of the seals or judgments that go onto the boss. So take note, this one should not be prioritized over the other 2. So all 3 of these seals get refreshed when the judging paladin swings on the boss. So for instance, if you've put Seal of Wisdom up, your white swinging on the boss, that is going to stay up and get refreshed for the duration of the encounter. If you do have 3 paladins and each of you judges something different to the boss, the Retribution Paladin has an ability when he casts it that refreshes the duration on all the seals. So it is very possible to have all 3 of these up on the boss. So you're getting the health, the mana, and the bonus holy damage. And that's what you should aim for in your raid environment once you get up to raiding. The last seal that we've got is Seal of Justice. So this is mostly seen as a PvP seal. However, something to note is it does have a special interaction in PvP. So if you have Wisdom on the boss and you judge this, your melee swings to refresh it count as a spell. And that's going to double the mana that you're getting back from Seal of Wisdom. So it can be really useful if you're off-tanking your boss where you're not getting hit and you're not getting your mana recharged. The judge effect of this one is going to stop something from fleeing. So if you're tanking in a really tight environment where you know you're going to have runners and you want to stop somebody from running off and pulling an extra pack, perhaps your stunner's on cooldown, this is something that you could judge. It is a bit more of an advanced ability. I don't use it too often, but it's good to know it exists and it does have some PvE usefulness. We got a couple more seals here that I've nearly forgot about. So the first one is Seal of Martyr or Seal of Blood. This is exclusively a Rep Paladin seal. We never really use this. It scales with weapon damage. We generally don't have great weapon damage skills. We use a spell power weapon, spell power gear. This one doesn't scale very well with us. So as far as Prot Paladin goes, you don't need to know this exists. So Seal of Commander Well, another weapon damage ability. This one's for the Rets. Leave it alone. As a fresh Paladin, don't put these on your bars. You won't need to use them when you're tanking. So guys, that concludes part 1 of the ability section. When the second part is live, you'll be able to click through it now on the screen. If I'm still working on it, there'll be a sub button so you guys can sub and get a notification for when that's live. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.